Hello. Thanks for saying hi back. I was just telling Dave that I've reached the age where if I have my glasses on, I can't see the paper, but if I have them off, I can't see any of you. So I'm choosing the paper, so I hope that you're smiling at me. My name is Jessica Smith, and I'll be your MC for this evening. Dave's really going to regret giving me this job. I'm the stay-at-home homeschooling mom of 12, and now I have a captive audience and a microphone. So who knows how long I'll talk or what I'll tell you. Also, if I had known, I pulled out the ticket today and realized that my picture was on it. If I had known that my picture was going to be on a ticket, I would have said no. So the selfie that I took of myself, because as a professional photographer with 12 kids, I have absolutely zero pictures of myself other than my senior pictures, and I thought it might be weird to send that one to Dave. Whether you're here in person or watching online, welcome to the 2021 Legacy of Life program. Right to Life of North Central Indiana appreciates you taking this time to be with us this evening. It is so good to see all of you. We want to thank New Hope Church and Pastor Shane Wilson for making their church available to us to hold this event. And Pastor Shane is going to start by leading us in prayer.
Would you all join me in prayer, please? Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the opportunity that we have to be able to gather, to be able to be with one another. We thank you for who you are. We thank you for just the gift of life. Thank you for breathing life into each and every one of us. Thank you for the life that you extend and that you give to us, and it is such a precious gift. God, I pray for this evening. I pray for those who are sharing and speaking tonight. Thank you for those who lead in the efforts of Right to Life, and just ask, God, that you would give them wisdom beyond their ability, that you would bless them in immeasurable ways, and that tonight that you would be honored, that you would be glorified, that your name would be lifted high and made great through everything that is said and shared here. And God, we just love you and praise you and thank you for opportunities like this. In the mighty and wonderful name of Jesus Christ, we pray and give thanks. And all God's people said, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Shane. We have a few special guests here tonight, so I'd like to introduce them. So when I say your name, if you could please stand so that we could acknowledge you. First, we have the Columbia City Mayor, Ryan Daniel, is here tonight. We have Whitley County Commissioner Chad Banks. And representing Congressman Jim Banks are Chris Crabtree, Senior Advisor, and Anna Shelton, the Director of Strategic Communication. So if we could just show appreciation for those special guests who are here tonight. Right to Life appreciates Congressman Jim Banks' strong pro-life stand. He couldn't be with us this evening, but we do have a videotaped message from him that we would like for you to watch right now.
Hi, I'm Congressman Jim Banks, and I'm proud to represent Northeast Indiana in Congress. But with a pro-abortion majority in both the House and the Senate, and Joe Biden in the White House, the stakes have never been higher. Over the past few weeks, Democrats have passed some of the most radical pieces of pro-abortion legislation in recent memory. Recently, House Democrats voted to remove the deadline for ratification of the 1972 Equal Rights Amendment. This move alone would nullify every abortion restriction across the country and force taxpayers like you and me to pay for it. They've also passed the Equality Act, which would change the definition of sex in the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prevent discrimination based on, quote, pregnancy, childbirth, or a related medical condition. Let me tell you, a related medical condition is just a sly way of saying abortion. As a result, your taxpayer dollars can be used to fund abortions, and it will be illegal for healthcare providers, including religious ones, like the Little Sisters of the Poor, to refuse to take the lives of unborn children. And to top it all off, Democrats passed and Joe Biden signed a $1.9 trillion stimulus package that included no Hyde Amendment protections. This will result in abortion providers like Planned Parenthood receiving $50 million in Title X funding. Also, Planned Parenthood having access to PPP funds, and taxpayers funding insurance plans that cover abortions. While these are dark times for our Cause for Life, as chairman of the Republican Study Committee, I'm here to tell you that my colleagues and I will not back down from this fight. With over 150 members, the Republican Study Committee is the largest caucus of conservatives on Capitol Hill. We are unified in our position that no taxpayer dollars should ever go to fund abortions. In January, I authored and led a letter signed by 200 Republican members of Congress and 48 members of the Senate, pledging to vote against any spending bill that would eliminate the Hyde Amendment. And we have done just that. I've also co-sponsored over 30 pro-life initiatives and introduced the Taxpayer Conscious Protection Act to require states to report federal Medicaid payments that are sent to abortion providers. Thank you for letting me be your voice in Congress, reflecting the values that Hoosiers care so deeply about. I promise to never stop fighting for life.
We are very, very lucky to be represented by somebody who is so passionately pro-life. And I know that our practice is usually just to reach out to the politicians that represent our area when we are unhappy. But I'm sure that Senator Banks would love to hear supportive things. So if you feel so compelled, reach out to him and let him know that you appreciate his pro-life stance and how hard he fights. And let him know this is a very difficult fight. I'm sure it's very draining on him and his wife and his family, that he has our support. Okay, now we're going to draw for some door prizes. My lovely assistant. Okay, so first we're going to draw for a $50 gift certificate to Pickles Cafe. All right. Please be a name I can read. Richard Gerber. You can pick up your prizes at the end. You can go to the, look how happy Rich looks. He's like thrilled. You can go to the ticket table at the end of our program and collect your prize. Next, we're going to give away a $50 gift certificate to Speedway. Nancy Gerber. I don't even know them. This isn't even rigged. They are just, somebody go rub up against them. They're very lucky. Okay, now we're going to do a $50 gift certificate to Kroger. If this thing says Gerber, like Marie Bro, B-R-E-A-U. How do you say your last name? Bro, Marie Bro. There you go. Congratulations. You guys can pick up your prizes. Yeah, we can clap for them. You can pick up your prizes at the ticket table when this is all done. Now would be a perfect time to silence your phones, turn them to maybe airplane mode, but I don't want you to turn them off because I want you to take pictures and I want you to post on social media and I want you to tag Right to Life of North Central Indiana. And if you don't know how to do it, I'm sure that there is a child or a grandchild. I have several teenagers right there that I own. You guys can ask them for help. We want people to see that we gathered today, and we want them to see what a great event it is so they don't want to miss it in the future. So let's use social media for good. Okay. Right to Life of North Central Indiana's Executive Director, Dave Kuntz, is going to report how you've been making a difference for life in Whitley County and in North Central Indiana. Dave.
Here for 10 minutes. Do you want to stand here for 10 minutes? Okay.
Does this make you feel pressured?
No, well, I don't think so. I'll talk fast. My glasses are the opposite of Jessica's. I can't see the print, and you guys are all without glasses, but you guys are all blurry right now. So, but thank you, Jessica. And would you help me please thank Jessica for being our MC this evening? Whether you're here in person or watching online, we very much appreciate the fact that you took the time to be with us this evening. I think many of you will remember last spring, those of you that have attended the banquet before, because of COVID, we had to go to a completely virtual program rather than the usual banquet that we have. This year, with COVID still being a concern, we decided to make this a program only and live stream it. And then our hope is that by next year, things will be back to normal and we can once again have our usual banquet at the Carver Center. I want to add my thanks. Jessica already mentioned it, but thank you to Pastor Shane and New Hope Church for allowing us to use this facility. I also appreciate the tech team. Pastor Shane is doing double duty and working with Heath on the tech side of things and helping us with the audio visual tonight as well as the live stream. Also, we appreciate the sponsors that we have that are sponsoring this evening for their support of this event as well as Right to Life. And I also want to thank Lee Murgy and Paul and Deborah Tomaszewski for their efforts here in Whitley County. They help make this event a success every year, and they're doing a lot of things that help us with the various aspects of and events here in the county. With our merger with Marshall County Right to Life last year, as well as adding Miami County, we now serve 8 counties in the north central Indiana region. A lot's been happening with Right to Life and the pro-life movement here in our 8-county region, even during the pandemic, and I want to take a few minutes and highlight some of the events and activities that give you an idea of the various ways that you're making a difference for life. Many of you are familiar with Life Chain. National Life Chain Sunday is always the first Sunday in October. It's an event when tens of thousands of Christians across the country peacefully and prayerfully stand for life for 1 hour on public sidewalks. During that hour, we're a witness to those passing by that abortion is the shedding of the blood of innocent babies and hurts women physically, emotionally, and spiritually. But we're also reminding people that God heals and forgives. Last fall, we coordinated Life Chains in 8 different cities around north central Indiana, including here in Columbia City. And I want to thank those of you who participate in the Life Chain every year for helping us stand for life in a public way. In a non-COVID environment, we would normally take 20 to 25 high school students to the National March for Life in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, the in-person march was canceled this year. Our hope is that, again, by next January, things will be back to normal again, and we'll be able to once again give high school students the opportunity to participate and experience the National March for Life. And on the topic of getting back to normal, we're pleased that we're now able to get back to events this summer. We've got the Expo that takes place in late May, Whitley County 4-H Fair later in the summer. And then now that Marshall County is a part of our area, we're also involved with the Blueberry Festival, which brings in several 100,000 people every year. So we're looking forward to being able to have a booth at that event. Through Right to Life, you're encouraging 5 different pregnancy resource centers in north central Indiana and providing financial support for their efforts. That includes a Hope Center, which, while it's located in Fort Wayne, has a location here in Columbia City. Our partnership with each of these pregnancy centers means that in 2020, you had a part in providing pregnancy tests for 736 women at the 5 pregnancy centers. You also had a part in 2020 in 445 women meeting their unborn babies for the first time through ultrasound. These pregnancy tests and ultrasound appointments are an opportunity to help abortion vulnerable women find the emotional and physical support that they need to choose life. Right to Life of North Central Indiana has been supporting area pregnancy centers for over 2 decades because we realize that while Right to Life is able to educate people on abortion and pro-life issues and encourage women to choose life, often they're going to be pressured by their financial situation, or maybe it's somebody in their support system that's pushing them to have that abortion. The pregnancy centers are the face-to-face opportunity to provide the emotional and physical support these women need to continue their pregnancies. The big project over the past 2.5 years has been the Safe Haven baby boxes and promoting the Safe Haven hotline number. At the 2018 Fall Banquet in Winona Lake, we announced a goal of raising $30,000 for 2 baby boxes to be placed somewhere in north central Indiana, and then also for advertising the Safe Haven hotline number. God has taken that goal much further than we ever imagined. Through Right to Life, you've partnered with many individuals, organizations, businesses, and churches around north central Indiana, as well as partnering with Monica Kelsey and the Safe Haven Baby Boxes team. What seemed like a challenging goal of raising that $30,000 has expanded to the point that many of you have been a part of raising over $50,000 for the construction and installation of not 2, but 5 baby boxes in north central Indiana. The most recent one was just back on February 3rd when the Marion, Indiana box went live. In addition to these 5 baby boxes, we also know of a Wabash, Indiana box that was actually paid for by other organizations and some folks in that community. There's also one in process in Plymouth that's been paid for by community members, including churches in that area. So once the Plymouth baby box is live, we will be blessed with 7 boxes in our north central Indiana region. In addition to the baby boxes, Right to Life donors have helped to raise over $60,000 for billboards to advertise the Safe Haven hotline number over the past 2.5 years. We know of 3 north central Indiana babies safely surrendered because of the hotline number billboards many of you have helped pay for. And in fact, up on the screen, you'll see one of those 3 babies. Baby Nola, and some of you are aware of this, but baby Nola was surrendered right here in Columbia City. Nola has been adopted and is doing great with her adoptive family. Her surrender began with a phone call to the hotline number because of a billboard paid for by Right to Life donors. So if you've given directly to the Safe Haven Baby Box Project or given generally to Right to Life, you've been a part of helping mothers in crisis and saving the lives of babies like baby Nola. And that help will continue into the future as we continue to promote the Safe Haven law, the hotline number, and the availability of the baby boxes. In addition to the Safe Haven hotline number billboards, we're also working with several different billboard companies, including Burkhardt Advertising, to promote the pro-life message. In December, we signed a contract with Burkhardt to have at least 1 pro-life billboard in every county in our region every month during 2021. So you are promoting a message of life to those who travel around on our north central Indiana roads every day. In fact, when you consider the 4 billboard companies that we work with and their statistical information, well over 100,000 cars will pass by at least one pro-life billboard, one billboard with a pro-life message in north central Indiana every day. The bottom line through all of this is that Right to Life of North Central Indiana is really just a channel through which all of you are making a difference for life. You're changing hearts and minds. Even throughout the pandemic, you've been encouraging women and men to choose life, and you've been saving babies, both born and unborn. All that Right to Life has been able to accomplish is because of God's blessing and the fact that many of you are willing to sacrificially give of your time and finances, as well as praying for the pro-life effort in north central Indiana. Later this evening, we'll have an opportunity to financially support the pro-life cause in north central Indiana. Your donation will help save babies like baby Nola by promoting the Safe Haven hotline number. You'll help continue the billboard messaging that celebrates life and encourages women and men to choose life. Your donation will also help cover the cost of pro-life radio spots that encourage and educate the public. You'll be supporting pregnancy centers in our region and helping and encouraging students to stand for life. So thank you very much to all of you that are involved in some way in helping to have a successful pro-life voice in our region. The political landscape may make our life challenging and more difficult and sometimes really seem overwhelming. but together we'll continue to promote the pro-life message and save lives in north central Indiana as long as God allows. Thank you.
Dave is truly one of the hardest working people I know. He is so dedicated to this cause. I don't think he sleeps. I get emails from him at like 4 a.m. So we are so blessed to have Dave representing us. Let's give him another round of applause for everything he does. On another note, if you have never attended the Life Chain, I would just like to kind of personally invite you to do so. It's a way that we can, just by being present in a silent way, stand up for what we believe. There are people there of all ages. My young children attend, and you just stand there and hold a sign and pray for an hour. The people who drive by are overwhelmingly supportive. Once in a while we get a random hand gesture, but most of the time it's a thumbs up. It's not always the thumb, but usually it's the thumb. So if you haven't attended, I just really encourage you to mark your calendars. It's the first Sunday in October every year, so you can mark your calendar now so that you know ahead of time. And I encourage you to come. Bring a friend. You don't have to make a sign. They have them for us. So if you're uncomfortable with your artistic ability, it's okay. You just grab a sign and you just stand and pray for the cause. So, okay, for many of you, our speaker, Peter Heck, needs no introduction. For those of you who don't know Peter, he is an author, speaker, and teacher who lives in Kokomo, Indiana with his wife, Jenny, their daughters, Addiston and Bristol, and their son, Grayson. For several years, Peter maintained a busy itinerant speaking schedule, teaching at churches and conferences around the United States and Canada. In 2018, Peter accepted a full-time teaching ministry position at Jerome Christian Church in Indiana, and now conducts a more limited travel schedule. Peter is a lead news editor and opinion writer for Discern. His opinions have also been published in the Washington Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, and on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. A former radio host, Peter produces a daily podcast and has authored a number of books on Christians and the culture. Please help me in welcoming Peter Heck.
Thank you. Thank you. You did not need to read all of that, but thanks very much. The thing that you need to know, earlier when she said that about if you have a kid that's near you, they can help you with the electronic device. No joke. This just was 2 days ago. My son has this assignment. He's 7 years old, has this assignment. We're all on iPads at the school where I teach. And so he brings his iPad to me because one of the requirements is they can't look up the answers. So you have to lock them into this program that prevents them from being able to access other websites while they're taking their test. So he brings it to me so I can lock him into that, and I can't figure out how to do it. And he says, "Dad, just give it to me." And I said, "Grayson, it's password protected. You don't know how to give me the iPad." So I handed it to him. Boop, 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 boop. There, it's done. You're grounded. I just grounded him right there. This is just preposterous. First of all, he's not supposed to know the passwords. Anyway, so it's great to be with you. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm just glad we're meeting together again. It's wonderful. I'm going to be even more thankful when I can sneeze again in public and not feel like a leper. But it's true. Even though, and I'm saying this in all sincerity, I have learned the long line at the post office, whole new ball game. When you let out a big old sneeze, you clear that place out like nobody's business and right to the front of the line. Anyway, shouldn't make jokes about this. It's good to be here. Let me set the stage for you. I've been teaching at the school where I teach now for, this is my 19th year there. And when I first started teaching, I decided I wasn't married, wasn't dating, obviously didn't have any family or kids, that now was the time to go to grad school. Because once you have a family, that becomes more difficult. But even then, when I went to Ball State for my master's degree in political science, it's expensive. and I was a teacher, and I'll never complain about a teacher's salary. That's just not something that I'll do, but I did need another source of income. So I took a job at the school where I teach during the summer months when I wasn't teaching, doing maintenance and groundwork and stuff like that. Now, the guy that I'm working for those summers, he's an ex-state police officer named Greg, and Greg would be happy to tell you that he barely got past high school, and it all had to do with who was sitting right next to him. That's why he graduated high school. He was just not into education. But if you would have watched those summers that I worked there, 5 or 6 summers, and you would have looked at uneducated Greg and me on the cusp of a master's degree, and you looked at the way that we conducted ourselves and exercised basic common sense, you would have never come to the conclusion that between the two of us, I was more educated than Greg. There are plenty of examples. I will give you one. Greg had given me the task of weed eating by the creek that runs along the school's property. It all grown up. It looked really bad, and so he asked me to weed eat. Well, I get the weed eater. I go down there, and this thing is like an overgrown forest. It's going to take me a week to get this done because this is a long stretch of property. And so I start using my brain, and I figure, I could make this a lot quicker work if I just got the push mower and mowed this stuff down, just a couple swipes, and this is going to be done in a day. So I go back and I get the push mower and I speed over there in the little green Gator, and we loaded it in the back, and I went over there and I got that thing out and I set it on the ground and I started it up, and I had probably gone about 10 feet, maybe about 5 seconds before I heard the sound. I'm mowing along and thump. And I looked down, everything's dead, and there was the mower blade, and it was in 2 complete pieces just laying there on the ground. I'd hit a stump that I didn't see. I didn't see the stump because the weeds had grown over it, which is probably why Greg had told me to weed eat in the first place. But anyway, so you can't mow with a broken blade, so I pick up the mower, put it in the back of the Gator and the blade pieces, and I'm going back to the high school to tell everybody what I'd done. The problem was that in my haste, I did not tether the mower down in the back of the Gator. So as I'm speeding back to the school and I hit the curb there on Harrison Street, the mower decides to leap out of the back end of the Gator, and it shatters all over the roadway. Now we got like a million pieces. Now Greentown is not that busy of a city or a town, but Harrison Street is the busiest road. And so I'm out there in the middle of the road, and I'm picking up the pieces. I'm trying to direct traffic at the same time. So I get on my little radio, and I said, Greg? And he said, yeah. I said, we got a little problem out here. He said, well, what did you do? And I said, well, you come on out here to Harrison Street and you're going to see. And so he shows up in his Dodge Ram. This scene happened so many times over the years that I worked there. He got out of the truck and walked up. He's got his big cowboy hat on and his Dudley Do-Right sunglasses. And he walks up to the scene of what I've destroyed. He pushes the cowboy hat a little higher on his head. First thing the man says is, master's degree, huh? And I said, yes, sir. And then Greg speaks to me what I truly believe are the truest words ever spoken. I, to this day, believe that these words, and I heard him so many times, he looked at me and he said, Pete, you proved to me time and time and time again that educated don't mean smart. That's what he would always say. Educated don't mean smart. You know something? As I've left that job and conducted my adult life, I watch the news, I write the news, I look at everything that's happening in our culture, not just with the abortion issue, but that would be one, and I come to the conclusion that Greg couldn't have hit that on the head any better. I look at the culture and I see all of these brilliant people. And when I say brilliant people, I put it in quotation marks because these are the people that we're told are brilliant. They're the ones that are on television, the experts over whatever problem it happens to be. These are the people that have all the alphabet soup after their name. They've gone to the prestigious universities and people have handed them these pieces of paper that tell them they're oh so brilliant. And all of these brilliant people that surround us, that tell us all about these things that we're supposed to know, they somehow miss the connection, this obvious connection between the moral crises that we face and the moral problem that's at the heart of every single one of them. They will find every example and excuse in the book, and I think in some cases they're actually trying, but they're blinded to the moral issue that is at the heart of every single one of them. And even so-called conservatives miss it. I mean, this isn't just the progressive left. You will find very few people that have higher regard for the former governor of Indiana. I appreciated him, Mitch Daniels. I think he would have been a great president of the United States. But remember, and some of you that have been involved in pro-life work for a long time know this, it was Mitch Daniels that called for a truce on the so-called social issues. Now, hold on a second. And a lot of us in the pro-life movement were screaming this at him at the time. When one side calls a truce, but the other side, through the legal processes, is continuing to wage its war on life and all of our values, and our side calls a truce, well, that's not a truce. If both sides haven't called the truce, then it isn't a truce, it's a surrender, is what it is. But it was Mitch Daniels' belief, and this is the stuff I'm talking about. Until we solve our budget and our monetary problems, we're just going to need to agree to get along for a little while on issues of morality. You know what this always made me think of? This always made me think of my years in Little League baseball. Now, I'm not going to tell you anything that you can't obviously tell. When I played Little League, I was awesome. I was don't laugh, it's very, very rude. Anyway, so I was a pitcher on my team in Little League Baseball, and with as great as I think I was, this particular day, let's just say that, I was having an awful day on the mound. Couldn't throw a strike to save my life. I'm walking in batters, just batter after batter. I cannot throw a strike. Well, normally when a pitcher is melting down on the mound, his manager is supposed to calm him down and help out. Now, my manager was a portly fellow. His name was Alan, and a lot of us believed that he had taken the job of manager simply for the free concessions that came with that responsibility. He is sitting in the dugout, okay, as I'm out there melting down on the mound, and he's just shouting bits of wisdom at me from the dugout. Bits of wisdom like this. You just got to rock and fire, Pete, just rock and fire. He kept saying that. I'm now 42 years old. I have no idea what rock and fire means. No clue. And then, after I've walked in like the seventh batter, he throws this one at me. He says, Pete, don't aim the ball, just throw it. Don't aim the ball, just throw it. Okay, now I am out there trying to put a ball over a tiny little plate that by the moment is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and this genius is telling me not to even aim the ball. I said, fine, all right, buddy, you want that? That's what you're getting. And I reared back and I hurled that thing, paying no attention to where I was aiming, and I hit the batter. But I didn't hit the batter that was up to bat. I hit the batter in the on-deck circle that's over here. Now, the worst part of this story is, and I didn't know if we had the technical ability to do this tonight, my parents filmed everything when I was a child. It was the years that when the camcorders that sat on your shoulder came out, and my dad was obsessed with it. Every moment of my childhood, up till college, I get out of the shower the first day in college, and there's Dad with the video camera. Anyway, I'm making that part up. But this whole thing is on video, and you got the umpires that are there trying to decide, do we give this guy his base or not? I mean, he got hit by a pitch, but he wasn't up to bat. I think back on that, and that's exactly what I think of when I see this. That we have all of these people, these politicians, these leaders, and they're out there, and they're giving us all of these solutions, and all it is just hurling pitches without aiming it and hoping maybe they'll land a strike. It's the blind boxer. He's blind, and he's hurling punches in the dark, hoping he's going to land one, but the truth is, all he's doing is knocking over tables and chairs and destroying property all around him, not getting close. After all, okay, we got to solve our monetary problems before we deal with moral issues. Really? What is debt? What is debt if it's not a lack of stewardship? And what is a lack of stewardship, friends? It's a moral problem that you have, right? And what causes market exploitation? People taking advantage of others in the marketplace. Is that not the result of greed and self-indulgence? And what is greed and self-indulgence? They're moral problems. In other words, this is what I'm getting at. If you actually want to solve your budget and economic and monetary problems, that's not going to be done by somebody that ignores immorality. It's going to be done by someone who calls out immorality, addresses it, confronts it, and deals with it. And that's the reality on every single cultural and domestic problem that we face. Every single one. I'm a teacher. How many experts over the course of the last 2 decades have I heard that have come up with a brilliant answer? And it always seems to involve better teacher pay, more money hurled at schools, maybe better technology. Better technology. We got an iPad in the hands of every kindergartner. Better technology. Maybe we need more of this and more of that. Listen, you know this as well as I do. I know you know this. You are never going to solve the problems with American education until you solve the problems with the American family. You can throw as much money as you want to at the problem, but until you deal with the immoral root of the issues, it's never going to solve. Same thing with broken homes. You can have as many government social programs as you can to take the place of missing fathers in the home, but you're never going to solve the problem when it's a moral issue. Same thing with drug abuse, same thing with violence. All of this is tied back to moral issues. Sin is at the root of it. That's the issue. But politicians don't talk about sin. You don't get elected by talking about sin, so we play at the periphery. We play along the edges of all of this. So for generations now, we have been doing what? We've been dealing with symptoms of problems, putting Band-Aids on the symptoms of our problems. We've been sweeping out cobwebs while doing absolutely nothing about the spider, and then we're curious why the spider keeps showing up and throwing more cobwebs at us. Over and over. I want you to imagine for a second that you go to the doctor. You got a runny nose, and you can feel something coming on. You know your body, and you know when you're getting sick. So you want to nip this in the bud like Barney Fife, and you go straight to, I had to throw him in there, the greatest television show in the history of humanity. They do not make programs like that anymore. Anyway, sorry, that was an editorial comment. Free of charge. All right, so back to this. You're going to nip this problem. You show up at the doctor's office, and the doctor comes in and examines you. And he says, yep, I see what's going on here. I got what you need. He leaves the room, and he comes back with a box of Kleenex, and he hands it to you and says, this should take care of your problem. And he walks out. You leave, and at the desk, you pay your $30 copay, a little confused as to what just took place, but whatever. You go home, and a week later, you're back at the same doctor's office. You still got the runny nose, and now you got a sore throat because the doctor didn't deal with the problem. So the same doctor comes in and examines you and says, yep, this is kind of what I thought was going to happen. Well, that's good to know. And he goes out and he comes back and says, this should take care of it. He hands you a second box of Kleenex and now a package of Hall's cough drops for your throat. And you go out and you pay your $30 bill and you go on your way. And the next week you're back again. You've still got the runny nose. You've still got the sore throat. Now you got a burning fever on top of it. The doctor looks at you and says, oh, yes, this is progressing just as we expected. And he leaves the room and he comes back, third box of Kleenex, second package of Halls, and now an ice pack for your fever. I would like to think that there isn't a single person in here. I'd like to think there's not a single person you know who would continue to go to a doctor who was treating them in that way. Once word got out that this doctor is only capable of treating the symptoms of the problem and not actually dealing with the problem itself, I would like to think that that doctor would be out of a job. I'd like to think that we would be smart enough not to patronize a doctor like that. All right, that's my point. For generations now, we've been listening to leaders of both political parties that have told us they have just what we need. You give us enough money, you give us enough votes, and we're going to solve this problem. And we continue to pay the ever-increasing price of their services, and where do we find ourselves? We find ourselves right back in the same doctor's office with the exact same problems, actually worse problems than we had before. Over and over and over again, this happens. Our culture is not dealing with the fundamental questions because our leaders disagree with the fundamental solution. There is only one solution for the problem of sin, and our leaders do not address that. They're the very example of what the prophet Ezekiel talked about. They have eyes to see but do not see, and ears to hear but do not hear. And if that is the case, as we continue this, maybe, this is my suggestion, maybe it's time for a new doctor. I don't know. Maybe it's time to try something different. Maybe it's time we realize if that's where our leadership is in this country, it's up to us. It's up to you and me to change all of this. So if that is the case, what's our best approach? I'm not going to spend the rest of the time making the case that it's up to us. I hope you're with me on that. And if you are, what's our best approach? I will tell you that I've learned this the hard way. For years, I was on the radio, and I made this very mistake. And I don't want people to make this mistake any longer. The biggest error that we make in this cultural debate over abortion and life is believing that this is, at its heart, a national political issue. We just pass this off and say, well, this is something that is dealt with in Washington, D.C. That's a national political issue. It's the exact opposite. And the longer we pretend that this is national and political rather than relational and spiritual, we're going to continue back in the doctor's office getting our Kleenex boxes and cough drops and ice packs over and over and over. It's the exact opposite, relational and spiritual. Why do I say that? Well, take all of these issues that we deal with. When it comes to life, abortion or suicide or doctor-assisted suicide or infanticide and euthanasia, you know, you can take all of those. If you're being honest with yourself, you can take all of those and recognize that our position, our attitude or belief about those issues is ultimately predicated upon what we believe about this age and the age to come. What do I mean by that? Our hope in another life after this, or our lack of hope in another life after this, that's where the spiritual side comes into this, that is going to determine exactly how we respond to all of those issues. You see, this is the stuff, just so you're aware of this, nobody talks about this stuff in the public square. We don't have conversations about spirituality because it doesn't involve money. And that's what drives everything these days. But this right here, you want to know how a person is going to feel about these issues, answer this question. What do they think about that reality? See, what we do and what we believe and think, that's a reflection of what we believe and value. I got all excited. I got to take a drink. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay, that's enough time. All right, here's an example of what I'm saying. If you've got a pagan, by the way, I should have told you this before, and I should have led off with this. I'm obsessed with this little screen next to me. My classroom has a smart board right next to me, and so this is one that you can touch things and move it around. So if I start touching and rubbing the screen, that's why. It's just a flashback. I'm not really a weirdo, but I get to be the weatherman at school. It's the coolest thing in the world. But you know, to solve the problems in education, we need more technology. Right. Anyway, okay, so back to what I was saying. You got this pagan, godless mind. If you have a pagan and a godless mind, then your hope is ultimately wrapped up in this age, because this is it, right? If you have a pagan, godless mind, all you hope for is life in this age right here. So everything in this life is going to be centered around achieving the idea of the good life, because this is the only life you get, right? If you got a pagan and a godless mind. So anything that threatens that good life is in immediate danger. If you have a pagan and a godless mind and all you want is the good life, anything that stands in the way of that is in immediate danger. So you have all of these things down here. Let's say you have a loved one who goes into the nursing home. They can't do anything anymore. They can't. They're just essentially living out their final days, but man, it's an extraordinary expense. Or maybe they don't have any loved ones, and instead they're mooching off of society, and all the taxpayers are paying to keep them alive in the nursing home. A pagan, godless mind looks at that and says, this is standing in the way. I'm spending money to keep someone alive that has no good life anymore, and all of a sudden the idea of euthanasia becomes a lot more reasonable to them, right? Okay. If you are threatened by others, they're a threat to your pursuit of the good life, all of a sudden violence becomes more reasonable to you. If you believe that you cannot achieve the good life for whatever reason, all of a sudden suicide becomes reasonable. Why? Because you have no hope beyond this life. And if your life, your pursuit of the good life, is going to be hampered by a baby, I can't go to college. I'm going to be a mockery in my community. My whole life and all of my dreams just shot down the toilet. All of a sudden, abortion becomes far more reasonable to you because this is it. This is the only life you have. And we turn around and say, but you're depriving other people of their good life, right? If you kill them in the nursing home or if you get rid of them in the womb, what about their pursuit of the good life? But all of that is dismissed because with no eternity, there is no accountability. So all that matters is me. We become the gods of our own little universe, exactly what Satan sold Eve in the Garden of Eden. Whoa, I'm getting fired up because that's what's happening here. All of this is justified, all of it, on the basis of what brings happiness in the here and now, because that's all we get. And then there's this group of us who are believers, and we believe something completely different, do we not? I mean, this is what separates us. People always talk about, why are you pro-life? It has nothing to do with Republican, Democrat. It has nothing to do with conservative, liberal. It has everything to do with these principles. My hope isn't in this age, it's in the age to come. Mine is a robust doctrine of resurrection that is steeped in the idea that God is renewing his creation for something far greater than what we can even imagine. Our theology recognizes that humanity is set apart. What do I mean by that? What is our theology? You and I believe, hopefully we're on the same page, that we are all created, Acts 17 says, by a God who knows us by name. The God of the universe knows you by name. That is incredible worth that is invested in a singular human being. Our theology says this is a God who knitted us together in our mother's womb. Every human being, regardless of the circumstances of conception. Oh, this person was conceived by rape. Okay, that act is horrible and deserves to be punished. But God was at work in that womb, knitting together that human being, forming them. That's how they got there. That's what Psalms tells us, right? And we know that humanity was placed above all other living things. And how did it happen? Because God gave us, endowed us with his image, Imago Dei, that we have the image of God. And that right there is why we value human life, which is exactly why we don't or we shouldn't. It's a mistake if we do. Echo the words of the world that somehow equate man's worth with his work. When we say things like, well, we can't allow abortion, we might be aborting the next Einstein. We can't allow abortion, we might abort the next Edison. We shouldn't allow abortion, we might abort the next Beethoven or Bach. Well, it's true, we might, but it's also true it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's the next Einstein or it's the next guy that works at the Speedway. It doesn't matter. Why? Because it's human life. You see, this is the reality that you and I get because of our worldview, that life isn't valuable for what it does. Life is valuable for what it is. It's a being that's made in the image of God. And yes, that's true for the next Einstein, but it's also true for that little Down syndrome baby that we now execute 9 out of every 10 because they're not perfect enough for us and our concept of the good life. You see, this is what sets us all apart. Stanley Hauerwas wrote it this way. Such a great line. It kind of blew me away, the beginning of it at first. I say in 100 years, so think 100 years from now, if Christians are known as a strange group of people who don't kill their children and don't kill the elderly, we will have done a great thing. Really? That's all it's going to take? And Hauerwas put it this way. I mean, that may not sound like much, but I think it's the ultimate politic. I mean, if we can just be a disciplined enough community who through the worship of God has discovered that we're ready to be hospitable to new life and life that is suffering, then as a matter of fact, that is a political alternative to the otherwise, that otherwise the world isn't going to have. And why does it matter that the world has it? Why is this up to you and I? Because if this battle is ultimately at its heart spiritual, we better offer it, otherwise we'll never solve it. You and I have to be engaged in this. Listen, I know we have political leaders here, so I need to make sure that you understand this is not an insult of anybody that's in politics. This is an observation of the reality and the limitations of politics. Okay? In order to be an effective politician, you have to stay in office, right? Because if you're not in office, you don't wield any power. But in order to stay in office, you cannot venture too far from where the votes are. We all get this, right? We're not children. If around me, imagine a circle around me, this is where the culture is on the issue of abortion. But truth is way over there, that little black spot. That's where the truth is, but this is where the voting population is. You may have a politician who, as a matter of principle, says, that's it. This is what's right, and I'm standing on this, and all of you better come over here because this is what's right. Well, what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen. There's going to be somebody that challenges them that pops up right here and is going to attract all the voters, and that person has lost their job, and therefore now they wield no more power. That's the nature of politics. Very, very rarely can you get someone to wrap a rope around all of society and by themselves hook it and pull it with them over in one direction. Maybe you'll have individuals that can do that in some ways, but what's the real solution here? Politics follows the culture. So if you want politicians who are more pro-life, you need to move your culture to being more pro-life. And who is it that does that? You see, this is what we don't like. It's easier to blame everything on the politicians, but if the culture's to change, we're the catalyst. We have to be the ones that are moving the culture. And we can't do that. A church has to do more than merely shout pro-life slogans or warn people about God's judgment, because these pagan minds don't believe in God to begin with. So they're not going to be moved. The culture isn't going to be moved by us saying things that are very true, but things that are not winsome, things that are not going to win anyone over. You see, this is the issue. Doing that, simply shouting out slogans and warning about God's judgment, this stems from us regarding this as a political issue when it's not. And Satan's going to use that. Satan's going to use that against us to frustrate us. We've been shouting these things for 50 years. We've been warning people for 50 years, and nothing is changing. So why do I have to keep doing this? Why do I have to keep coming to these banquets, right? It's going to frustrate us. It's going to distract us. We're going to get distracted by peripheral arguments that we have with people instead of concentrating on what's actually going to be effective. And it's going to alienate us in the eyes of the world. Remember what Paul wrote to the Corinthians. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. I'm not going to have influence on people. And clanging, When your church or when you as a believer shouts more about politicians' voting habits than we do shouting about what we can do, what the very thing Dave was just talking about, what we can and are willing to do to help single mothers in our midst, that's a clanging, resounding gong that the culture's going to hear, but they're not going to be moved by in any way. This is the problem. It alienates us in the eyes of the very ones, this circle that I was just talking about. I'm getting really excited about this. If you're starting to fade, wake yourself up, because this is good stuff, and I'm just told you that. Anyway, thank you very much. Anyway, focus. All right, so we've got this group of people right here. This is who we want to influence. And if we're a resounding gong and a clanging cymbal, they're not going to be influenced. There's got to be a better way than that. When a girl has an unplanned pregnancy, what is it that drives her to abortion? Ask them, and they'll tell you. It's very obvious what it is. Number one, let's acknowledge this. It's the sin nature and the pride of humanity. There's no doubt that that's at play. The sin nature to take care of the problem, to do even that which we know isn't right because it seems the easy way, of course that's a motivating factor. But what else is? Fear of judgment. That is a very real feeling. What about the girl in your church who makes a mistake and she becomes pregnant? Her reputation is shot if people find out about this. How easy to just go and take care of the problem. That's what Satan's going to tell her. It's a lie he's going to feed her. Right? And her concern over provision. I'm 17 years old. My dad left when I was 3 years old. I've never even known the man. And my mom works 6 jobs just to try to make ends meet. I'm on my own with this baby, and we can barely feed ourselves. How would I take care of this child? Those things are the reason that somebody goes and seeks an abortion. We know that to be the case. So maybe if the church was shouting loudly to alleviate these problems, you're not going to be judged. We're here to love. We're here to care for you. We're doing the very things that Dave just talked about. Maybe if we were shouting louder about that, what do you think? That girl might trust us more when we address that core fundamental issue of our sin nature and pride, instead of starting out shouting about this. You see, that's what I'm talking about, being winsome and effective in our approach. That's why I wanted several years ago to just restart everything, to repent of my habit of turning this over, my calling as a Christian, turning this over to the national government, saying, oh, this is on them. It's easy to do that, but I don't think that's where God wants his church. J.K. Wall wrote it this way: the Bible tells us to submit to governing authorities, but not to look to them first to solve our problems. And this is a lesson Americans, including American Christians, must relearn. The federal government isn't there to solve our problems. Being a pro-life church or a pro-life Christian means being a group of households who bend over backwards to help and provide mothers who are scared and hurt. It means welcoming without reservation whatever Tamar or Rahab or Ruth or Mary. And it's funny, sometimes you throw those names and we have this idealized view of who these women were because we know how God worked through them. But how did their culture see those women? Look at each one of them. You know how the culture saw them? The very way the culture looks at teenage girls who have unplanned pregnancies, who are living sexually depraved lives, exactly the same way. And how effectively did God use them? How are we seeing them? Those people that God would bring into our circles. It means not only providing physical goods, but building genuine friendships with them. Because people trust you if you have a friendship with them. We are so, and this is me, I'm pointing fingers at myself. I'm so sure of my arguments. I love to argue so much. It's like a spiritual gift just to bicker. I'm sure that that's in there somewhere, that we often fail to listen to people who have had abortions, to explain what it is that motivated them. We have to, this is so important. We were just talking about this earlier. Stop hiding behind our screens. Whether it's our computers and our Facebook debates, or whether it's our phones and our tweets, where we're throwing out these statements that sure, they're going to get retweeted and liked because, oh, you owned the left with that statement right there. But it's not going to win anybody's heart. It's not going to change anybody. We actually need to engage people. You do know that when God chose to save humanity, how did he do it? God could have done it any way he wanted. And he sent a relational being to interact with humanity. I think that's how God wants to change the world, through relational beings that interact with humanity, with his church that's involved not behind a screen, but in person with one another. This makes us gentle and loving, and those are the people, who are firm in their beliefs, who are firm in the truth, but are gentle and loving, and that's how you change a mind. And that's the other side of this. That's the relational side of this that can't be handled at a ballot box. It's handled by you and I and the way we deal with one another. When you and I consider this a national issue, I don't know if this is you, but I fear how often it is. We think we can just wash our hands of it. And why? Because you can't change the laws. You haven't been elected. You're not in that position. So ultimately, you can rail against everything wrong with the abortion issue, but you can't do anything about it. You're not on the Supreme Court. Well, no, you're not on the Supreme Court, but that's not how we're going to solve the problem. Being on the Supreme Court doesn't move this circle. Being an elected congressman doesn't move this circle. You move this circle. You and I have to engage. That's the point in all of this. So how can any of us hope to alter those ridiculous statistics that we hear? You know who I think had that very question? Not about the issue of abortion, but Israel had their walls, the walls of Jerusalem, obliterated and destroyed. The Old Testament book of Nehemiah is when they went about the business of rebuilding the walls. Imagine one person sitting there and looking at these destroyed walls around Jerusalem saying, I don't know what I can possibly, I'm not in construction. I don't know what I can possibly do about that. This is a mess. I don't know when we're ever going to fix this. We got to elect the right people. And then if we elect the right people, then maybe they'll rebuild the walls. They'll begin some kind of construction project. You know, it'll be a great, glorious, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Maybe that's how we'll go about it. Yeah, see, that was good. Anyway, I didn't even plan that. It just came out. Anyway, so if you read that, right, if you read in the book of Nehemiah, how did the problem get solved? It's one of the most amazing things. This is never a passage that you would think is going to inspire anybody, but Nehemiah chapter 3. All that chapter is it's explaining who went where to rebuild the walls. All of these believers that Nehemiah, and they're assigning them to various places on the wall. So you'll read a few verses about the builders at the sheep gate. And then a few verses later, it's the builders at the fish gate. And then you read about the builders at the broad wall. And you're sitting here reading this saying, why in the world do I care? I don't know who these people are. Who ever heard of a fish gate and a broad wall? And then you got the builders at the old gate. A little further, you got the builders at the valley gate. But we're not done. Keep reading and you've got the builders at the refuse gate. That is an unfortunate position to be assigned to right there. Then you got the builders at the fountain gate and the builders at the water gate. I love that there's one called the water gate. That is just too good. See, out there at building the wall. That was my Richard Nixon imitation. Nobody ever gets it. Builders at the horse gate. So that's what Nehemiah 3 is all about. All of these believers sent to various places on the wall and they're building. So the question that I leave you with tonight, this is the whole point of what I'm saying. If there's one thing I want you to remember is, which gate are you? Where are you building this wall? If our job is to move the culture, our job is to rebuild the wall, then where are you? Are you engaged somewhere on this wall? Are you a builder at the prayer gate? Some of you can pray the lights out. Are you? Are you praying for the hearts and the minds of political leaders, local, state, national, the ones who are right on this issue to have the courage to stand up for what's right, and the ones that are wrong on this issue? Are you praying that God would remove scales from their eyes? Not in a hateful, we need to judge these people kind of way, but in a these people are captive to the enemy. Please open their eyes to this. Do something miraculous that only you can get the credit for, God. Are you a builder at the prayer gate? Are you a builder at the education gate? Where you're working with young people and fostering relationships with them so that when they have questions, you're there to answer those questions. Some of you can serve like crazy. You just have that, you're always bubbly, and you know these people. They're so annoying. They can wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're in a good mood, and they're here to serve, and they're all this over. They just stop with the energy. I got a gut feeling that our MC may be in that category. Anyway, sorry, you're not really annoying at all. But this is, I just really insulted the MC, but I didn't mean it like that, but you know what I meant. Anyway, the service gate, where you have this incredible ability and gift to serve. Are you serving the North Central Indiana Right to Life? Are you serving the local crisis pregnancy center? Are you doing that? Maybe you've got a law degree. Are you using your legal mind to make legal arguments and understand the laws and the Constitution and what is allowed and what isn't and represent those who are in trouble? Maybe you're a builder at the political gate. 3, at least, politicians tonight. Are you leading in such a way that advocates for these principles of life and sticking your neck out when you need to to be a vocal spokesman for those who have no voice. Maybe you're a builder at the medical gate. You've got medical knowledge, you got a medical degree, you can inform people about this. Maybe you're dealing one-on-one with the women in these situations. Are you a builder at the discipleship gate, taking Christians who have come into your church, are baby Christians who don't understand and don't have the full Christian ethic of life, and you're teaching them and training them. This is why we Christians are opposed to these practices. It isn't political, it's theological. You surrendered what? What does the song say? I surrender all but my politics? No, you surrender everything to God in Christ. Your will becomes compliant with His will. His will becomes your own. Are we discipling? Maybe you're a minister. Are you engaging and working the principles? God is pulsating with life. Are you making sure that that's embedded in your messages that your congregation is hearing? Maybe you could be a mentor at the local school. You know how many kids don't have positive role models in their lives? The Kids Hope program is in a lot of schools. Are you volunteering your time to work with a young person that doesn't have that influence? What is it that you're doing to rebuild the wall? Maybe it's this. Maybe you're a builder at the financial gate. God has been very good to you and blessed you immensely with resources. He's been that way with all of us. We live in the United States. But maybe you especially have been blessed in this way. What are you doing with it? What are you doing with that which God has blessed you with? Are you building your own kingdom and your own name, your own retirement nest egg? Or are you investing in something that's going to have eternal impact and make an eternal difference? Putting up a billboard that 100,000 people see every day. And maybe the right person will see it on the right day, and there'll be a soul who eventually ends up in heaven because you chose, I'm not going to spend that much on Starbucks. I'm going to invest that in North Central Right. Do you see? It's something that simple. What are we doing with the money that we've been blessed with? Which gate are you? Everybody has gifts. Everybody has a place to serve. We shake our fist at the sky and ask God, you're God. How do you not see this and do something about it? And you heard that Christian song that came out a few years ago. God's answering us and saying, I did do something about it. I made you. So go and share my amazing love. I don't know, I'll close with this. I don't know how many of you know the name Mary Martin. She was a Broadway actress for years. She was the one that popularized the role of Peter Pan, believe it or not. But Mary Martin starred in, on Broadway, Hammerstein, Oscar and Hammerstein, not Oscar Hammerstein, Hammerstein and Rogers, whatever it was, the South Pacific. You've heard of South Pacific. Well, Mary Martin was well known by this point in time. So when she was the star of this show, everybody was excited to see how she was going to do, and they all show up. And Mary Martin stunk in that role. She was terrible the first few nights, and the critics were brutal to her, just tore her to shreds. So it's the last night of that first segment of when these shows are on Broadway. And Mary Martin admits in her biography she's depressed. Right before she goes out on stage, she gets a note backstage with a bunch of flowers, a bouquet of flowers. And she opens up the card, and it's from Oscar Hammerstein, who wrote the lyrics to South Pacific. And on the card, Oscar had written these words to her. Said, Dear Mary, a bell is not a bell unless you ring it. And a song is not a song unless you sing it. And love in your heart wasn't put there to stay. And love isn't love unless you give it away. And so Mary Martin goes out, and the critics that had torn her to shreds said that performance that night was unbelievable. And this one that had been so cruel to her, I love the way she describes this, came up to her afterwards and said, Miss Martin, what made the difference tonight? What was so different about it? And she gave him a smirk, didn't want to give him much more, gave him a smirk and just said, tonight, I gave it away. And she turned and she walked out the door. He had no idea what that meant, but she did. Listen, I don't know what kind of love Mary Martin had in her heart. I don't have any idea. But I do know the love that is in the heart of every human being that is bought and paid for by the blood of the Son of God. I know what love that is. And I know that that is the love that turned the entire world upside down once, changed the world completely. And I believe, and I know you believe, that that love can do it again if you and I are simply willing to give it away. Are you? Thanks for your attention tonight. God bless you.
That's okay. I don't need that. Okay, well, thanks, Peter. As always, you're motivating and challenging, and we really appreciate your message. In fact, it kind of reminds me of my background that I'll take just a minute or two and share, and then bring this to a point where we'll have an opportunity to donate. But my wife and I joined what was at that time Kosciuszko County Right to Life in 1990, and I had another job. I wasn't, it was all volunteer that we were doing with Right to Life at the time. And we got to about 5 years in, it was 1995. I started kind of looking around and realizing that not anything from a national standpoint, pro-life wise, wasn't really changing. Pro-life laws weren't being passed. The abortion rate wasn't going down. And then I really feel like during that period of time that God encouraged me that I was concentrating on the wrong thing. And like Peter said, concentrating on the political side and expecting the big picture to change. And I realized that I really needed to concentrate on what I could do and what I could do locally. And if I could save one baby from dying from abortion, and keep one woman from making a decision that would negatively impact her for the rest of her life, then it was all worth it. And what I needed to do was, what could I do on a local basis personally, and then leave the results up to God. And that's really where I got more involved. Linda and I finally made the decision late in the 90s to, I left financial planning and went into full-time, both of us went into full-time pro-life work. And so I just want to encourage all you that what we're trying to accomplish through Right to Life is give all of you the opportunity to be able to make an impact here locally. Peter mentioned the billboards. You just never know what a billboard might do in a woman's life. Maybe she's being pressured by somebody to have an abortion. Maybe she thinks that's her only answer, and then she sees a pro-life billboard that encourages her to choose life. Or maybe it's encouraging her family to choose life and actually help her. So there's a whole variety of things, reaching out, helping young people to stand for life. You never know when you've helped a young person realize that they can stand up for what's right and the impact they might have on a friend that they know that's pregnant and is considering an abortion. So I can keep going on the examples, but those are just some ways that we see you all and Right to Life working together. I want to let you know that your donation, no matter how small or large, will help make sure that moms in crisis will get the help they and their babies need by supporting area pregnancy centers and promoting the Safe Haven hotline number. Your donation will also help with our billboard messaging, as we've already talked about. It celebrates life and encourages women and men to choose life. You'll help cover the cost of radio spots that encourage and educate the public, and you'll be encouraging students to stand for life. And 10% of all the donations given this evening, donations or pledges, will be given to the pregnancy centers in our region. Our fundraising goal may seem a little high as I give it to you, but our goal tonight is to raise $20,000. The good news is that we've already had 3 donors step up and generously contribute $9,000 to a matching pool of funds, so that all donations and pledges given this evening and actually through May 15th related to this event will be matched dollar for dollar. So if we're able to match the $9,000, we'd have a total of $18,000, which would get us close to the $20,000 goal. So it is doable. It's those watching online have the opportunity to donate, and then we'll also be sending a letter out to others who maybe weren't able to watch online or couldn't attend, and give them an opportunity to watch this program again and donate. So when you came in this evening, you should have received or picked up an envelope, white envelope. Inside there, you'll find a pledge card. And if you'd all just take a minute to pull that out. Those of you here in person can give using the pledge form, or you can text the word "give" to the phone number that's up on the screen. And those that are watching online can click on the donation options, and there's a variety of ways that you can donate. So no matter what you feel God is leading you to give, you'll be making an impact in changing hearts and minds and saving lives right here in North Central Indiana. And as I already said, that impact will be doubled tonight. So what I'd like to do is just take about 3 minutes and go through the card, and then have a few announcements, and then we'll be ready to close the evening. So at the top of the pledge card, you'll see the place to put your personal information. There's also a place for your email address. I would just encourage you that if you're not on our email update list, if you're not getting our emails, which we send out about every couple of weeks, to put your email address there and circle it, and we'll make sure you get added to that list. We're beginning to see more censorship from Facebook, Twitter, more social media problems, and so the email is one of those ways that we can continue to get that information to you and not be censored. So as you move down the card, there's some options for giving tonight. If you'd like to give more or less, you can fill out the other blank at the end of that line. When you've decided how much you'd like to give, we have 3 ways you can do that. You can give by cash or check. You can make the check out to RTL of NCI. So you can do that, or you can, if you're not ready to give tonight and you'd like to have us send you a bill in a few days, we can do that. Or you can give your donation by credit card, and the credit card information is filled out down at the bottom. We will assume that everybody is giving a tax-deductible donation, but if you don't need that tax deduction, you can check the I do not need a tax deduction, and if that's the case, we'll use your donation for office-type expenses. You also may not want to give one time tonight, but you'd like to give over a period of time, and you can give monthly or quarterly, and there's a place to fill that in. You can also give that electronically, and if you choose to do that, you'd fill out the information at the bottom, and then if you could check the 5th or the 20th of the month for when you'd like to have that donation processed, that would be great. Peter, did you use the bottle on the right? Okay, I think this is it. This is the one you didn't use.
I still licked it.
Thanks. Okay, so as you're finishing those up, you can fold the card in half. If you're giving by cash or check, slide that in. Whatever you've done with the card, you can put that back in the white envelope and just leave it on your chair this evening. We'll have somebody come through and pick those up. So, again, thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for your support. I do have a few announcements before Jessica comes back up. I'm going to go through all these notes, figure out where that is. Wow, had a lot of notes there that I just skimmed right through. Okay. You may have heard of the Roe v. Wade movie that came out just about a month ago. We paid for the rights to make that movie digitally available online to our supporters. It's still available for you to watch through April 30th, and you can find more information about that and how to link to that at our website, which is nci4life.org. We're also encouraging everyone to participate in our Pray to End Abortion yard sign campaign that we'd like to do through the month of May. For those of you that are frustrated with Facebook, this is one way to keep Facebook from censoring you. You can put a sign in your yard. The only person that can maybe censor you would be your neighbor that might not like the sign, but hopefully that won't happen. But we have signs for free to pick up, yard signs that say Pray to End Abortion. They're the 40 Days for Life signs that are out here as you leave this evening. And so we'd encourage you to pick up one of those. Also, we've decided to have a mid-year life chain in Columbia City. We haven't worked out all the details yet, but we know it'll be sometime the week of June 21st, which kind of coincides with Old Settlers Week. But if you watch our newsletter, if you get that, we'll have information in our May newsletter. We also will have it on our email updates and Facebook. In addition to the Pray to End Abortion yard signs, we also have a book that we'd like you to take, again, for free. Many of you may be familiar with Randy Alcorn, who's a very good author and writes a lot of pro-life books. We have a book, one of his newer ones, Pro-Choice or Pro-Life. It's a small book with some good information in it that you might find helpful. And finally, we didn't have our usual banquet food, but as you leave this evening, we'd like to give you dessert. We have packages of truffle balls, 2 to a package. Each person there's enough for each of you to take one package. We want to thank Patty Lennon, who's the wife of one of our board members, for making the truffle balls. So please make sure you pick up a package on your way out. And again, remind you that if you want a door prize, the one family especially, to go to the ticket table to pick up your cards. Again, thanks for your support for the pro-life movement here in Whitley County, as well as across this region. No matter what's happening at the political, at the state or federal level, we're going to keep working. We appreciate being able to partner with you to make a difference for life no matter what's happening around us, and keep doing what we need to as long as God allows us to. So thank you very much.
My claim to fame from now on is going to be that Peter Heck called me annoying. He hadn't even known me for 30 minutes, and usually it takes at least an hour before people realize that I'm annoying. Also, I don't know if you heard the noises made by my family when he said I was probably a morning person. My kids know to completely avert eye contact until the first pot of coffee is completely gone, and then it's probably not best to speak to me until I'm halfway through the second. I'm so not a morning person. Right, kids? Yeah, they're all nodding their heads viciously. I want to thank you. I want to thank Peter again for coming and speaking to us, and I want to thank Dave for his tireless efforts. I want to thank all of you for coming out and being with us tonight. I just want to remind you, and I know that you guys know this, but I need to be reminded sometimes when you're deciding how much to put in that donation spot, remember that God's generosity cannot be undone, and that when we give of ourselves financially to support what he desires, he always finds a way to give it back to us one way or another. So just remember that when you're thinking about what that final number should be. So on behalf of Right to Life of North Central Indiana, thank you again for coming out this evening and for your support of the pro-life effort in Whitley County and North Central Indiana. Father David Hunick from St. Paul of the Cross is going to close our evening with prayer, and then you will all be dismissed. Father David?
Let us pray. Lord God, we thank you for our salvation in Jesus Christ. We thank you for the call he gives us, not a call to sit in a corner cowering in fear over our enemies, mystified about how to overcome the culture of death, despondent because of our sins, or worried about the perceived political strength of our opponents. Rather, it is a call to stand victorious in the light of the resurrection and to proclaim to the culture of death, you have been conquered, you have no place here, no power to defeat the forces of truth and goodness. Yes, Lord, we stand in that light, and we are filled with joy, not a superficial joy that rises and falls with the ebb and flow of circumstances beyond our control, but with the profound joy that only you can give and that nobody can take away. In the strength of that joy, may we, your people, continue to proclaim your truth and share your grace, not only within the walls of our churches, but in the halls of government, in the voting booth, in the media, and in every inch of the public square. Lord, in our efforts, in our work for you, may we find you. In our efforts to change the world, may we ourselves be changed. In our struggle to build a culture of life, may we find life eternal. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.